It's Friday, and it's early Friday. Wow, it's amazing. We have opened up the tavern earlier, and you have found your way here. I am so glad that you are here at the Nutmeg Tavern with me. I'm your host, John Townsend. I'm joined, today by Ryan, and he's busy cleaning dishes in the back, but he'll be out in a minute. And on the other side of the time vortex, controlling all the controls, which I don't understand that technology, Aaron.
Hello. There he is.
Yep. He's making it happen early today. He was even fighting the interweb spiders just earlier.
Seems to happen every week.
Battling them. But hey, we have got a huge show today because, of course, we picked a topic that's, well, I could probably talk on this topic, especially if I studied more and more for decades. We could have a channel that just did 18th century beer and we would never run out of content. Lots of just really fun information, so we'll be talking about all that good stuff. See, there he's back. Ryan!
Hello.
Yeah.
It's good to be here.
You skipped out last week, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we haven't seen him in a while. Have a good time off?
Yeah, it was great. I've never been to Charleston before. That was really wonderful. I enjoyed myself. And we spent a lot of time on the beach.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Let's see, where do I start with this massive topic? Or do I start off by mentioning, last week I think I mentioned Rick and Hillary and the More Luck to Us CD. They've repackaged that. That's the one that had the theme song to the ones we use in all the cooking episodes, right? I think goes like that.
Country
right?
dance.
Yeah, country dance. I think it's on here. Yes, right here. So they took that CD, which was older, and basically repackaged the music with like 10 new songs on here. So this one's available. I didn't get that link for you, didn't I, Aaron? Aaron will maybe do some digging around and he'll find that link for you if you're interested in that new version of this CD.
More Luck to Us?
More Luck to Us, all is what it's called, because they added that all to that. We'll talk about these guys a little bit later. When he's found that link.
Yes, sir. It's in the chat.
So let's talk beer in the 18th century. I've got a few pictures I want to show in a little bit, but I wanted to broach the topic. Wait, should I open this up now, Ryan?
I'm thirsty.
Let's go.
Yeah, okay, so this is something that Ryan picked up someplace. The reason why I like this bottle, and I did not have him serve this, was because I wanted to talk about this wire tying thing. I was reading earlier today, and they talked this whole method of tying on, wiring on the cork and everything right out of the 18th century books. So I thought it was just fascinating that, yes, somebody is still taking the time to do it the old-fashioned way. This is, do you know how to say this? It's
Chimay, I think.
There we go.
I'm probably wrong.
Trappist monks making beer. Ooh, yeah. And smells good.
Somebody says you're wearing the beer drinking hat. I don't know. I don't know that.
There we go.
Yeah, cheers, everyone.
Yeah.
Somebody in the chat's brewing right now.
Oh,
nice.
You want this? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, he does.
I haven't had this beer in a long time.
Okay.
Like years.
So, lost track of where I was at already. Beer in the 18th century. So a lot of times the question has come up, and we've talked about it. And, I've backed away in the past from being really, really firmly like, beer in the 18th century North America, boom, it's really, really important. Beer was extremely common in England for that time period. Everybody's like in the bread episode. People are surviving on bread and beer. And that is, I mean, some people's diet. That's it. And beer was one of those kinds of things that you would get sometimes as part of your pay. And even if you read Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, he talks about, it's like, what are these people? They're getting paid in beer, and they're wasting their money, and etc. Because for a while there, he was a water drinker. But later on in life, well, he succumbed to the idea of of being in the tavern and enjoying himself.
He succumbed to the drink.
Yes. Very, very popular in England. But in North America, cider actually is probably a little more common than that ratio of beer to cider in England. Again, cider's common in England. Cider's very common in North America. I think it really kind of depends a little bit about where you're at in North America. But the truth is that beer was still extremely common. Not only brewing it themselves in North America, but importing the beer. They could not make enough beer to supply demand, and so they had to import beer from Great Britain and other places to make the people happy with as much beer as they wanted to have. There were some issues with supply of the ingredients, and beer is one of those things that doesn't have a lot of ingredients. You got the malt, and you got the hops, and you got some yeast, and you got some good water, and that's all you really need to have beer when it comes to ingredients. So, but there was this great demand for beer in all walks of life, whether it's the governor of the colony, or it's the lowliest worker. They might be drinking small beer, but they're drinking beer nonetheless. So it's very, very common. Beers, ales, porters, and cider. And again, when we talk cider, we're talking about 18th century cider, which is an alcoholic beverage, not just, basically apple squeezins that we kind of call cider today. I mean, if we think of an alcoholic cider, we'll call it hard cider. Their cider, it was an alcoholic beverage. The nice thing about cider was you squeeze those apples, you throw it in the barrel, and boom, it turns into cider. You don't have any choice. It's going to do the thing, whether you like it or not. No such thing as apple juice in the time period. It's going to do its thing. Cider was popular, more popular than it might have been in England in the time period, ratio-wise. Still, beer, very, very common. And there's just all these, all this great, documentation you can dig into about it. Things like, Harvard University in the 17th century, they were so concerned about making sure that their students had enough beer that they opened their own brewery right there. So you could, they would make their own beer so that those students would be happy and do their studies, right? I think the first brewery opening up in like the New York area is 1649, something like that. So just like very, very soon. And even those Massachusetts Bay colonists, the company is advertising for a brewer early on. They want to make sure that people know how to make beer in the colonies right away. Beer's super important. So there's a lot of brewers going on. The founding fathers we think of, George Washington and all those guys, they each had brew houses, maybe that just supplied beer for their own location. Maybe they, like George Washington, had a distillery also. So, I make some of that for myself. I sell it, whatever. Brewing is a big industry in North America. I thought one of the weird things is the hops idea. I was reading in one of these pieces about hops and how they're cultivating, they're really working hard on hops in Great Britain and in England at the time. And here in North America, they just kind of go out into the woods and find wild hops and pick it and use it. But after a while, they ran out of enough hops and had to import hops. So lots and lots of great stuff. I thought I'd go through the yes.
Real quick, actually, do you mind if I do some super chat?
Yeah,
stuff
go ahead.
First?
Go ahead. I'll drink some of this.
Yeah, there we
beer,
go.
and you read those super chats.
Woo! Okay. So a lot of people also are asking about beer bread. Why aren't we doing that? So keep that in your head.
Got it.
Makuda Pterodax is in super chat. Have you tried? Oh, have tried you. Oh, it's one of those. Okay.
Whoa.
I gotta do some fancy reading. Have tried you 1794 recipe for beef pot roast. I can heartily say is one of the single most divine meals I have yet consumed. Your channel started an American Revolution in the way I both cook. Yes.
Very good. Very good. Glad you're enjoying them, especially the pot roast. It was really good.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. This is from Enzo Vinci. Hello, everyone. My birthday was great. Huge thanks to Debbie for working so hard on all of my new clothes from Jazz.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. They got all they wanted. We've got a new member in Tyson Q. Thank you, Tyson. Enzo Vinci. Also today, I have the sad news of conveying to you that unfortunately Marie from the breakfast sausage making video has recently passed away. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Did you meet her, Ryan?
I was not there. No, and
Not
I
on
didn't
that
get to
one?
meet her when we went back.
Yeah.
That was at Genesee, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was Genesee
Yeah.
Country Village. So, yeah, and she was such a wonderful person, too. And I think she was really big into ghost stories and stuff.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think we would have got along.
Yeah.
I think that this is pronounced Inez Santos, but I am not very good at pronouncing names, so sorry if I butchered it. Dinner time over here, please send a beer. Yeah. If I could chuck one over the pond, I would. Amanda Marie, what is your favorite beer? Or, if you're not a beer person, what is your favorite beverage?
I do like some light ales. I really enjoy a nice brown ale, although I'm mostly a tea drinker. What can I say?
Hey, real quick. I'm going to put that video that she was in
Yeah.
in the chat.
In the chat.
Oh, that's
yeah.
great, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great video.
Such a wonderful. It's really tough to know. It's we've had a few people on the channel that it's like the Daniel Boone.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
Boone
he passed
Morrison,
away, yeah.
and some other folks that have been in episodes, and they're no
There are
longer
people
with us.
that I have not met, but
Yeah.
cut videos with them in, and then
Yeah.
I find out they pass. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I know them.
You know, I think this needs nutmeg.
Oh, don't say that. Hey, Aaron, do you have a
Yeah.
favorite beer?
Do I have a favorite beer?
Yeah. Or a favorite beverage?
As far as beers, I mean, that Oberon is.
You like that one?
Yeah, it's
Oberon?
pretty go-to.
Yeah, it's a good one. I have met few beers that I don't like.
Oh, I have.
when oftentimes you play for drink tickets, you get to used to drinking whatever's free. That's okay.
I've
with
become
me.
a PBR fan. Because it shows it just...
You've grown the PBR, huh?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if it's free.
Yes, right.
That's what I'm saying.
Picture of PBR. Thank
Yep.
you. Julie Esper sends a thank you, poultry pair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Denise Maloney Piran is on here with a dancing poultry pair.
Woo!
So thank you for that. And there's one more that I got to go looking for. Here it is. Mike Crook on Super Chat. Cheers and welcome back, Ryan. Thank you. I've made George Washington's small beer recipe from 1757, and it's a strange brew. Wheat bran and hops and molasses.
I'll read it for you.
You see
I
that
got it right here.
molasses thing happening a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, so here is George Washington's recipe for small beer. Now, small beer can be, and a lot of times it was, sort of making beer after you've made your first batch of beer. And it's you make a strong beer with that malt, and then you save all those grains and you kind of do it again, and you get this real low alcoholic content beer, which is a small beer. Although a lot of different brewers suggest is like, don't do it that way. You know, don't use it the second time. Just throw that stuff out to the chickens. Just don't use as much, and you can make a small beer, and you still have that. You have a better flavor. But a lot of times small beer isn't made quite like that. And George Washington's small beer recipe, it says to make small beer, take a large sifter full of bran. A sifter, I don't know exactly, probably a sifter. Hops to your taste and boil these 3 hours, then strain out 30 gallons into a cooler. Put in 3 gallons of molasses. So the ratio there is 10 to 1 gallons of water to molasses. That's what's going to bring in all the sugars that the yeast is going to work on. Put in that molasses while the beer is scalding hot, or rather draw the molasses into the cooler and strain the beer on top of it while it's boiling hot. Let this stand till it's a little more than blood warm, and then put in the yeast. If the weather is very cool, cover it over with blanket and let it work in the cooler 24 hours. Put it into a cask. Leave the bung open because it's going to be working till it is almost done working, and then bottle it that day week it was brewed. So I think he means 7 days later. It's always fun when you're reading these. I was like, okay, I think this is what he means. So yeah, instead of using malt in that one, it's a molasses, and molasses is a kind of a go-to for making these not beer beers. So spruce beer, ginger beer, some of these other beers, they're calling them beers in that time period. And they're, I don't know if we would necessarily call them beers, but that's George Washington's small beer recipe. So it's a great piece.
I think that's interesting because I think, well, that's probably not a true statement. Maybe I shouldn't say it. So many people now seem to buy their alcohol based on the alcohol percentage. It's like that's the first thing that they're looking at, and then it's like, oh well, I guess I'll try this because it's got a lot of alcohol.
Instead of what it tastes like,
right? Or just like that these folks are not concerned with the alcohol percentage; they're concerned with something good to drink.
Right, something that you can make, that is storable, isn't as nasty as maybe your water is, doesn't go bad, and also remember here about this molasses, and I've talked about whenever I use molasses in the channel, I always try to tell people, it's like, be careful of what molasses you're using. A lot of the molasses that we have today is blackstrap molasses. That is, at least in the time period, that is bottom of the barrel. It is the last squeeze, and it is very strong, strongly flavored and pretty nasty stuff. You want golden molasses or Barbados molasses, which is kind of a much higher grade. It's gonna bring in more of the sugars and less of the bitter of the molasses flavor that is not very good.
Aaron Howard just shouted out one of my favorite beers, and that is 3 Floyd's Gumball Head, which is a very good wheat, almost IPA. That's very good. It's good.
Yeah, and before do you have anything else, real quick?
I saw something real quick. Somebody wanted to know. It's off topic, but how long it took to build the bellows?
How long it took?
It was like
the bellows.
2 days.
Yeah, I mean,
and we were stopping to shoot.
Right.
Stuff.
When we stop, because when we're making something, it always takes about 3-4 times longer than it would take you if you just did it, right? Because each time we get to a step where it's like, wait a minute, this is important. Stop. How are we going to get the angle? You know, and so it takes a good time. It takes a lot longer to make a video while you're doing the thing. So a lot of times we don't know how long it would take if you were just making the thing.
I think a full work day, maybe like a day, maybe a day and a half.
Yeah.
All those little tacks on the leather took a while.
Still in all. Yeah. And if you had an air-powered tacker, you could do it in about an hour. So, on the topic where I was talking about, cider versus beer versus, small beer, there's a nice section. A lot of people have the question about ale. And I thought I would talk about ale real quick here. Where is that? There's a nice little section where it talks about ale. The liquor called ale, in distinction from beer, is usually of less strength and is less tinctured with the hops, being intended for drinking soon after it is brewed, not for keeping years as the other, which should be brewed alone, that is, without any small beer to be made from the same malt. So ale is mentioned a lot, and ale is popular and sort of, kind of evolves or comes, falls out of popularity as we go through the 18th century, and these stronger beers show up in its stead. And part of that has to do with the idea of commerce and how long we want this beer to last. And that's where you just mentioned, like, the idea of pale ale shows up. So pale ale is sort of the opposite of ale. It's a highly hopped ale. It's an ale or a beer that's made so that it can last even longer than regular beer because it's got all that extra hops. We think of hops as a flavoring thing when hops is really, it's all about preservation in the 18th century. You put that hops in so it doesn't go bad. So that's our ale. It's a lightly hopped beer, as it were. Do I go on? Do you have any questions for me? Okay.
Oh, yeah, sure. I do have questions if you want to go there.
You can jump in.
Oh, okay. Was beer... how about this one? This one was interesting. As far as currency, was beer and tobacco more common used currency than coin?
Yeah, it was kind of almost a question a couple weeks ago. There was a great coin shortage, especially in England and in the colonies through this 18th century time period. So much so that people were counterfeiting halfpennies. It would be like counterfeiting, 50-cent pieces. Are you crazy? But because they just did not have enough to go around, and there were trade tokens of the time period that would trade as a halfpenny because there's just like there isn't enough money to go around. So, in that, it's sort of like what happens World War II. The government says, oh, you can't pay your workers more, and so companies say, okay, if I can't pay my workers more, maybe I can give them other things to incentivize them to continue working for me, and so they offer things like health insurance. Well, I think the same thing is happening in the 18th century, and that is, well, my workers, I can't pay them more necessarily. Maybe I can't even get a hold of the coinage for that, so I will pay them in, I'll make sure you have as much beer as you want at lunchtime, or, etc. So some of that payment is coming in the form of possibly food, and definitely in the form of beer.
What about mead? I make my own, this person says.
Yeah, so mead's popular. It was more popular probably 16th, 17th century. Again, it shows up in all the cookbooks, but I think it's lessening in its popularity as we go through our time period. But yeah, mead, metheglin, which is a spiced mead, those are sort of, it's the same way that cider, you put that squeezed apple stuff into a barrel and it starts to work. Mead is just like that. It's like honey by itself, that'll stay good for years. You mix it with water, you dilute it, and all of a sudden, those preservation properties of the honey itself have disappeared, or at least they've become lessened enough so that the natural yeasts that are laying around start to work on it and turn it into mead. At least you hope it's mead and not some horrible bacteria brew.
What books on beer do you recommend? Are you going to get there later?
For the time period, and there are a lot of different, there's a couple of different kind of go-to books that are 21st century or 20th century. But I'll talk about the 18th century things because, I find them some of the most interesting things to read and kind of get into the head of people in the 18th century and what they thought about brewing and what the mysteries were. We've got about 3 or 4 different books on our website that are period books on brewing. Every Man His Own Brewer. The Coffee Man has some brewing in it. But this one I really like. It's 18th and early 19th century brewing. It's got 4 different titles in it. And so you can kind of get to see, what the similarities and the differences are. There's the practical treatise on the nature of brewing, the Complete Family Brewer, the Complete English Brewer, and the final piece in here is the Art and Making and Managing of Cider. So it's really got a nice mix of pieces. And I mean, every time I read through one of these things, you know, I learn a different section. They're actually interesting, you know, easy-ish to read. But again, you got those F's for S's and stuff like that. I promise you, though, you work through, you know, a few hundred pages and you don't even notice it anymore.
Not anymore. Somebody is in Super Chat. Who is that? Pork Chop Express. Could you educate us on early American drink known as Applejack?
Yeah, so Applejack is that's like apple brandy. We talked about that with what's his name, didn't we? With the guy down at
yeah, in the apple brandy
episode
video, right? If you guys watch that, he explains the difference,
right?
And then that way we don't have to remember it off
Did
the
it
top.
mostly have to do with whether or not the ground up apples were in the pot or not?
So some
in it,
people say that. Some people talk about it as the process of freezing it or how it's stored.
Oh yes.
So there.
But that's not well.
There are a couple of things that go in. I couldn't pull the right answer off the top of my head.
Yeah. There you go.
Rob Poole is also in Super Chat. Are there any American brewers or distillers that date back to the 18th century still using recipes and methods from that era?
There are some brewers that are going back and using some of those recipes. There's even one brewer that went specifically to make this George Washington small beer. So there are some brewers that are working on that. Now, I don't think there's any that are from the time period specifically that have, you know, drawn those things through into the, you know, from the 18th century. Like, all those guys have disappeared by now. But we have this, you know, huge resurgence of craft brewing going on. So, I mean, some of these people are dipping back into these older methods. And Rob Poole, thank you. Thank you for your Patreon stuff. So
another one just came in Super Chat. Jimmy Picks, yeah. Just a thank you for producing such interesting and informative videos of how life was in the 1700s. Love the channel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for everyone who watched the potato bread video.
Yeah,
potato bread
video. A lot
video.
of really good response on that one.
Right, and even the potato bread video, you know, we talked about the treatise of the art of bread making, and folks ordered that, and we sold them all, and we had to get more, and then we sold all those. We'll get more. It's a really good book.
I've got more questions, but you need to dig into this before we take our break at halftime.
Yeah, so one of the books I dug in, I thought, beer. And one of the weird places you're going to go to do research on this is the Naval Documents of the American Revolution. I thought, there's an interesting book to you know, search for beer in. And it's all these both American and British naval documents for the Revolutionary War, and you find a lot of references to beer where they're talking, you know, the Admiralty is giving orders to this British ship, a lot of times on, you know, here in North America, and they're saying something like, okay, you get on board, you've gotten on board all your food for a 6-month voyage, we've given you your orders. Now you need to take on board all the beer you can get a hold of. And if you can't get enough beer, then make sure to get so many gallons of rum and so many gallons of wine as a substitute. Beer is what is being served on board ship. That's what the sailors demand, especially when you're in sort of home waters. And they're consuming massive quantities of beer. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can find this. The Journal of Charles Herbert, and he's talking about the daily allowance on board His Majesty's ships is Sunday you get pork and peas, Monday burgoo, which we did an episode on, butter, cheese, Tuesday, beef and pudding. Wednesday, burgoo and peas, butter and cheese. Thursday, pork, peas. Friday, burgoo and peas, a lot of burgoo. Butter, cheese, beef and pudding on Saturday. a pint of wine or a half a pint of rum when at sea, and when in port, beer in abundance, and fresh meat twice a week. So it's not just, hey, you get, almost whatever beer you want, or it's like all you can drink beer when you're in port or you're in home waters. It's like, go for it, guys. Rations provisions allowed by the Continental Congress to each soldier, and this is rations or provisions for George Washington's armed vessels. And it's like 1 pound of fresh beef, 3/4 of a pound of salt pork, or 1 pound of salt fish per diem or per day, 1 pound of bread or flour per day, 3 pints of peas per week or vegetables equivalent. And then it's like a pint of milk per man per day when it be had, half a pint of rice or cornmeal per man per week, and then 1 quart of spruce beer per man per day, or 9 gallons of molasses. So they're serving out spruce beer, and that's another one of those molasses beers. You'd take that same George Washington recipe for small beer, and you would add spruce essence, or actually spruce tips you'd make yourself, and boom, you would have spruce beer.
And you've made spruce beer.
And yeah, you want to check out that spruce beer episode. It's fun making your own spruce essence. Used to be you could buy spruce essence very easily online. Whatever company that was, I think it was Rainbow Flavors. They're gone. I don't know if anybody is now again supplying spruce essence on the market, but it is not to be had. So you kind of have to make your own. And what you really want is black spruce, which comes out of Canada. Not easy to find.
Here's a spruce beer vid.
Chat. Correct me if I'm. Didn't you make spruce beer as a project just for yourself years before you did the video?
Well, we did for Beers of Joy, that documentary.
Yeah. I'm talking even before that. I thought that was like an old you and Kevin experiment. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe.
We did. Not spruce beer, but
ginger beer. Too.
Ginger beer.
Yeah.
Which is very, very, in essence, the same thing, too. Poor, what's his name here? Poor Charles Herbert. He was a prisoner. He was an English officer, and he was injured. He was in the hospital. On the 14th of this day, in his journal, the first day I came here, I was put upon a diet. I had only a half a pound of bread and a quart of milk, but now I am put on full allowance, which is a pound of beef, a pound of potatoes, and 3 pints of beer per day. Prisoners. There's even a section in here about how much beer prisoners were allowed. And whether or not they should change the ration from beer to water. And they said, no, we'll change the bread allowance. We won't allow them as much bread, but we're going to leave the beer. We're not going to take the beer away from them. I want to make sure all these guys get their beer.
So apparently Spruce Essence is on Amazon now.
Oh, good.
So go buy it all up.
There you go.
Tell them Townsends sent you.
It's easier, quicker, more consistent flavor than making your own spruce essence, but making spruce essence is still fun. It's like, okay, I boiled this like pine tree, and all of a sudden it's like, this smells really good. Like I could eat this.
Okay.
Can I say?
They want to know if this is a similar ration to what you gave Brandon and myself when we were building the cabin.
They didn't hardly get anything. I was like, I didn't have an oven to bake bread, so it's like
I don't remember any beer. I'll just say that.
You're right. That would probably make it a much more pleasant process.
Yeah. Axes and beer. What can go wrong?
We'll have to get a big old barrel of beer.
My choice? Speed and Style Tony in Super Chat. No questions or comment. I have tainted brain today and can't think. Use the tainted brain emoji.
What I think that would cure tainted brain
Hey, you look a little empty, John.
Is beer with, you got to have a little nutmeg on top.
Oh, see. Okay,
I ruined everything.
Luke G. We're Dutch and German immigrants brewing lager.
So, great great lead in for that whole concept of what's going on with Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is kind of a special place. Well,
Just hold off. You're going to go on a tangent here. Maxer Cool says, Happy Autumn, Townsends. I'm just cleaning up my super chat real quick.
okay.
Thank you so much, Max. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
And we do love autumn, let me tell you. And now go Pennsylvania.
Okay, so Pennsylvania.
Hit the gas and don't stop.
Yeah, William Penn. William Penn sets up this colony, and he is very, very open to people. He's very open to kind of a lot of religious tolerance going on in that time period. New England, not very tolerant of different folks coming in there. But Pennsylvania, very open to that. We get a lot of German immigrants, Dutch immigrants, and those folks coming into the Pennsylvania area, and they bring along all their customs. And so we get this mix of, we got all this English beer tradition coming into North America through the standard way, and then we get the German beer tradition coming in through all the German immigrants, and especially through that Pennsylvania area. And that does give us this great, there's like a lot of beer tradition, a lot of different ways of doing it that come in. So yes, a lot of beer brewing happening by those immigrants coming in from Northern Europe, especially German and Dutch. Do you have more for me, or want me to keep going someplace else?
Well, I want to say, Tim Pearson, welcome to the Nutmeg Tavern members.
Yeah.
We appreciate you.
Right.
We've got a ton of people commenting on cane sugar and honey, or cane syrup,
right.
and honey in place of the molasses.
Right. So for the spruce beer, what did I do? It's like, well, again, molasses is going to bring in sort of like a little too much flavor. It's really hard to get as mild a molasses as I think that they were using in the time period. Cane syrup's a possible thing, and it's almost like, the anti-molasses has got all the molasses taken out of it. But I would go with, and what I did go with was maple syrup. But that's like cheating. I mean, whoa. You add the spruce and the maple in there, and yeah, that is. But yeah, you could do the same thing, and you might even get away with that sorghum molasses. But I know it's not big around here, and so. And again, I don't know when sorghum really starts to happen. I don't think it's an 18th century thing. Okay,
so Erin Howitt's coming back in this chat with her spaghetti noodle chili mindset for Cincinnati.
No,
says,
no.
If you don't talk about the brewing tradition of Cincinnati, my heart will be broken.
Cincinnati brewing tradition. Okay, so what's the place there in Dayton? I don't know. Carolinian?
Carolyn. Shoot.
Anyway,
I've slept a lot since then.
Yeah.
Is it Carolyn County?
I think it is. I think it's Carolyn or something. We'll get it wrong. Wherever we were, we visited that microbrewery that does it like the 18th century way. Incredible. We want to go there and shoot an episode. It'd be a lot of fun. But Cincinnati, I am sorry, I do not know the Cincinnati brewing tradition because it's probably a little into the 19th century. Not that we don't do some early 19th century stuff, but you got me there. We'll all have to look that one up.
Yeah, we'll look it up.
There's a lot. There's more. Again, there's more to know about beer than I could study and research and talk about for years.
Aaron, if you know anything about that tradition, throw it in the chat and give us some.
Yeah, send us a link.
Carolyn Park, that's what it is. Carolyn Park.
There we go.
Okay. How did they check the percentage of their alcohol in the 18th century?
Well, I think it was I think that's about.
One of those books goes into that.
Well, I think the hydrometer was invented right there in the 18th century. I think in the 1760s, like late 1760s, and it's probably not something that's showing up to any great quantity in those brewers until 20 years later. So I'll bet you that hydrometer kind of thing isn't really happening until 1800 or so. And I think that they just it's like the brewer just knows. It's like that one's right. That one's not there yet. Did you have more for me, Ryan? Do
I'm
you want
sure
to
I
just
do.
keep yakking?
I'm
Here-
just reading too, though.
So,
hey,
yeah.
John, would you rather be stuck on an island with a lifetime of wine or apple cider?
With a lifetime of which?
Supplier of wine or apple cider?
Wine or apple cider? Well, it depends on the wine.
Pick your favorite.
I don't know if I'd live very long. Like Madeira or something like that. But apple cider probably would be a better day-to-day thing.
Man,
You
I
know.
think that I'd pick the Bourbon Island.
Oh, man.
Ask about that.
As long as we're picking islands to get stuck on.
Let's talk about spruce beer for a second.
Yeah.
An extract from a letter from a gentleman on board the HMS Orpheus, dated Halifax, 1776. We arrived here after a passage of 11 weeks from Plymouth and almost one continuous storm. Boy, you hear about some of these voyages and they were horrible. The ship much shattered and most of the men down in the scurvy. However, we shall soon be fit for sea again. All of our people are recovered, and we attribute it to the spruce beer, the common drink on board the men of war here and at Boston. For though they have plenty of good rum or French brandy on board every ship, yet they never make use of them when they can get spruce beer, as they find by long experience that it keeps the men healthier than any other liquor. Yeah, so if you want to stay healthy, drink spruce beer, not rum. That's what it says right there.
Somebody asked if it's true that beer making was one of the first commercial industries in the colonies.
That one is tough. I think every industry wants to claim that they were one of the first industries.
We know that it was early, right?
Yeah.
One of those Boston bar books that you grabbed, Massachusetts bars.
Tavern. Yeah.
Yeah, taverns. They were talking. Sorry.
It's all right.
Oh, they were talking about how there were communities that were set up specifically because there were brewing operations there.
And brewing is kind of it's like you want to set up your brewery where there's the right water, because water is the thing. And the books, go over that over and over again. It's like what you want is the perfect river water. You don't want pump water. You don't want well water. You don't want rainwater. That's okay, but it's not the best. You want really nice, soft river water. And so if you've got the right river water, boy, you set up there and you want to make your beer there. Just like in Genesee Country Village, they were emulating a beer brewer that was right at the Finger Lakes, and they had these wonderful clear lakes that made great beer, and so the brewer set up right where the good water was.
Somebody's asking if you would use spruce beer in a beer soup.
No, I don't think so. No, it'd bring in all the wrong kind of things. So, what we're going to do right now is we're going to show you the Genesee Country Village video, and we're going to break here for just a second. You get to watch the Genesee Country Village beer brewing brew house tour, and we'll be right back.
We've got a very special episode for you today. I'm here at Genesee Country Village Museum, and I'm going to have Brian Nagel, the brewmaster here, explain to us the entire brewing process here in the late 18th century and early 19th century at the brewery here at the village. This is going to be great. Thanks for joining us today on 18th Century Cooking.
Hello, my name is Brian Nagel, Director of Interpretation here at Genesee Country Village and Museum. I wanted to welcome you to the Walter Greaves Brewery here at the museum. The brewery was built actually by our founder, John Whaley, who was president of Genesee Brewing Company at the time the museum got started in 1966. He wanted to make sure the village was complete, so along with the houses, the businesses, the shops, the churches and taverns, we also had a working brewery here at the village. So we're very happy to be celebrating the tradition here at the museum now, brewing the way it was done back in 1803. We're very lucky that Thomas Douglas, the 5th Earl of Selkirk, sailed from Scotland to North America. One of the things he did when he was here was actually visited a number of business owners all across New York State. Luckily for us, he stopped in Geneva, New York, and talked to Walter Greaves, who owned a brewery just like this one, a malt house to make malted barley, and a distillery right on the shore of Seneca Lake. We know that Mr. Greaves was using a pump log just like this one to pump water up from the lake into the brew kettle. Today we're using a German-style brew kettle to heat up our water for doing the mashing, along with boiling our wort as part of the process as well. The main difference between a German-style brew kettle and an English kettle is the English kettles have a spigot on the side to make moving liquid around much easier than we have today. For me now, my process of moving water or wort around is using a dipper just like this one to move about 160 gallons of water from the kettle right behind me down the trough into our mash tun. Each time we do the mashing here in the brewery, we're using 250 pounds of grain of malted barley and wheat, along with 160 gallons of hot water to do the mashing process. We use 4 kinds of grain here. We use a pale malted barley, brown and amber roasted barley, and wheat as well. Before we can actually use the grain, however, we have to mill the grain. We have to break open the hull on the outside to actually expose the starch and the sugar on the inside of the grain to be able to convert the starches and sugars into more sugar to make our wort doing the mashing process. Now that our grain has all been milled, Matt is just finishing up putting the grain into the mash tun. Now the mash tun is ready to accept the hot water along with the grain. The mash tun has a false bottom in the bottom of it. That means there's 3 pie-shaped pieces of wood with holes drilled in it. This serves as a platform for the grain, but also as a sieve or a colander to allow the liquid to flow through our wort or sugar water and keep the grain behind. I'm back at the brew kettle, back to check the temperature of our water. Matt's built a great fire for us. You can see the steam rising right now. I'm going to reach in. Yeah, that feels just about right. I'll now start to ladle the hot water down the trough behind me into the mash tun and begin the mashing process. All of our milled grain is now in the mash tun. The water is going to flow down this trough and into our side pipe. Our side pipe has 2 doors in it. One door is actually in the bottom below the false bottom, which will allow the hot water to percolate up through the grain, providing a very even and efficient mash during the process. Once my grain is floating in that hot water, I'm going to open up this door and allow the water to come in right through this door into the grain and finish off the mashing process. Now that we've combined the hot water and the grain, we'll begin the mashing process. Matt will stir the grain and the water together for about half an hour, and then we'll let it steep together for about an hour and a half, allowing the hot water to steep up through the grain in the beginning. Gives us a nice, even, very efficient mash. Now we're letting it rest for a bit. For 2 hours, we'll get together and we'll begin to allow the wort to flow through the false bottom and down to our underback. We've waited our 2 hours for the mash to conclude. Everything looks good upstairs. We're now going to put the valve in the bottom of the mash tun, allowing our wort to flow through the false bottom and into the underback to start collecting the wort to get ready to pump it upstairs to start the final boil. This is the second pump log we have here in the brewery. The first one brought water up from the basement, from the lake. This one brings up the wort that we just sent down from the mash tun down to the underback. It's been collected there, about 160 gallons of wort collected down below. This pump goes right down into the bottom of that underback, and now we just pump that liquid back up here into our brew kettle. Matt's got the fire going once again. We're going to add some more sugar to this, more fermentable sugar, molasses or brown sugar or maple sugar in our neck of the woods, and then 2 pounds of hops will go in as well. We want to balance off the flavor of the maltiness, the sweetness of the brew, along with the hops we have here as well. Well, we finished boiling our wort. We boiled it for about 2 hours. We added in our 12 pounds of sugar. We've put in the 2-pound bag of hops for the last half hour of the boil. Now we've actually begun to transfer the liquid, the wort, from the brew kettle over into our chillers. The very important part of the process is installing a hop jack on the far end of the trough. Hop jack is a bag full of straw in a box with dowels in the bottom. That hop jack will capture any of the hops, big bits of grains that have made it through the process so far. Hopefully keep our wort as clean as possible when it goes into the chillers. Right now I'm standing next to our chillers, or our cooling trays, that allows us to cool down our wort from 212 degrees down to blood temperature, or about 100 degrees Fahrenheit by the touch going through here. Critical part of the brewing process to make sure we can get that cooled down to that temperature within 2 hours of coming off of the boil. If it takes longer than that, it's going to sour our batch or spoil our batch and not be fit to actually go on to fermentation and to create the beers and ales. So for that purpose, we're back in 1803, only brewing in, again, March, April, and May, and October to December, when it's cool enough outside for this wort to cool down in a couple of hours. We're still waiting for our wort to cool down a little bit more, but once it's down to blood temperature, about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, we're going to open up the last of the plugs on our chillers and bring that wort down through this hose into one of our fermenters. We are open fermenting the ale right now. We're going to pitch our yeast, add our yeast into the mixture, and that yeast is going to go into the wort. It's going to start to feed on the sugar in the wort, converting that sugar into alcohol, but also making carbon dioxide gas as a byproduct. We call it open fermentation, even though we have some small caps that go on top of those. It'll stay in there fermenting, creating that carbon dioxide gas and alcohol for 3 or 4 days in an active process. After that starts slowing down, we'll open up the valve in the front of the fermenting tun and send that now partially fermented beer through small funnels in the floor down to the basement to do secondary or final fermentation. We're now in the basement of the building. You'll notice the stone walls behind me. Also coming down from the first floor, a leather hose. This is going to bring the primary fermentation from the fermentation casks upstairs, the tuns upstairs, down to our casks down here. This is where the final fermentation takes place. We're going to bring down that beer from upstairs. We're going to bring it into our casks. We're going to add some more yeast and some more sugar to keep that fermentation going. Mr. Greaves Brewery is making the high quality or the strong beers and ales, and so we want to keep that going here as well. We're going to actually put a cap on the top of this. We want to capture the carbon dioxide gas coming off of the fermentation process to create the carbonation in the beers in 1803. We'll come down every once in a while. We'll open up the cask. We will pour off some of the beer inside, check for its alcohol content with a hydrometer, but also its carbonation as well. In November and December, we can let this actually ferment in here a bit longer. It's colder outside, it's cooler down in the basement. It'll stay safe longer as well. We can make our stronger beers and ales in those months, getting it close to even 13% alcohol at that point in time. When it's ready to go, when it's the right alcohol content and the right carbonation, we'll pour off the beer and the ales into 32.5 gallon casks that are then sold to the stores, the taverns, the inns in and around Geneva, New York. And then it's sold out to customers there by the growler, by the pail, by the bottle as well. Thank you very much for joining us today at the Walter Greaves Brewery at Genesee Country Village Museum. We're so proud to be able to showcase the way brewing was done in the late 1700s and early 1800s here in Western New York. So please come out and see us when you have a chance between May and October and ask us any questions you'd like to. We'd be more than happy to share our story and the story of early brewing in North America.
I really want to give a special thank you to Brian Nagel for explaining this brewing process to us. He did such an amazing job. And if you're ever in this Western New York area, please come and visit the Genesee Country Village and Museum. It's an amazing place. And I want to thank you for coming along and joining us as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century. I want to give a special thanks to all the folks at Genesee Country Village and Museum for all their help. Make sure to check out their website. If you're
Such a great tour. He did an amazing job. It was great. We went there. We said, hey, can you know, we weren't even planning on doing that tour when we showed up at Genesee Country Village that time. And we're like, well, you know, maybe we got one more video. And he kind of showed us over the brewery there. And we said, let's do this video. Let's do it. And he did a tremendous job. And
that is one of my favorite videos we've ever done.
Right.
Yeah, that place. I mean, you just like when you're there, it's like I want to do a video there and there and there and there.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it's based on the Genesee beer, right? The Genesee beer baron who owned that. He actually started the Genesee Country Village, and so, you know, there's that big beer tradition for that Rochester, New York area.
Anybody that's ever met Brian Nagel knows
Yeah.
that guy is incredible.
Yeah.
He has a wealth of knowledge, and he's so fun to talk to.
Yep. Great.
And he crushes it in that video.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Just bam.
I remember editing that and I was like, this is a breeze.
Yeah.
There's no bad takes.
And I'm not sure. I don't think that he was used to being in front of the camera. He was just used to doing tours and
Right.
tours.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
he's just really good at it.
Obviously, check their hours because that video is old. Because in it he says something like, "We're open." Da da da.
Yeah, I have no idea in this day of 2020 what's going on at Genesee
That was
Country
like 4
Village.
years ago.
So after that, was it 2 years after that or 1 year? I can't remember. We went there for a conference and built an earthen oven on site there.
Yeah, and that was with Pat Mead, and Pat Mead is another person who's passed away. She was in that bread episode just in a bit, because even when we were there, she was in ill health, getting over an auto accident or whatever it was, and so yet another one of those lost folks from past videos.
Here's real quick. Somebody's asked for the website. Here's their website, the official one right there.
Here we go.
There you go.
So I want to get to, I don't have a huge list of Patreon names, but I wanted to talk about Patreon real quick. Patreon is one of those ways that people help us do what we do, making videos here on the channel. And it's just like a little bit of money per month that people kind of set it up and you can change it, whatever it is. The brand new Patreon people this week, Annie Aesthetic, Michael Melendez, Jay, I always work these out. I always sound them out beforehand, and then I get here and my brain empties right out. Jay Mukayama, Inez Santos, James Ademic, Ethan Brand. I already thanked Rob Poole, and we are this close to $3,000 on Patreon. So again, super thank you to Patreon people. You help make videos that are hard to do doable. So thank you. We have done videos at Conner Prairie. It's been a couple years, but one of the videos we did was on their making of salt glaze items. And just recently we were talking with the folks down at Conner Prairie, and they've graciously offered for us to sell some of their salt glaze pottery pieces. So a lot of times I'll have sometimes I'll make tea in actually I have one at home and one at work, and I use them all the time for making tea. But the cool salt glaze mug and their little porringer. And you want to check out the making of salt glazed pottery down at Conner Prairie. It's another one of those great fun videos we did at an historic site. And Aaron will throw a link up to those guys that are in our store.
There's a link. There's a link for both products, and I'm getting ready to put the video.
Right. And I mean, this not only helps us, but it helps Conner Prairie too. So.
Oh yeah.
If you are a trekker, camper, reenactor sort of person, and you want like one vessel for eating and drinking, the porringer is perfect. That's why we carried it.
Yeah, it's like
it's great.
Yeah.
Nick is in the chat. Nick's father passed away yesterday, so we're sorry to hear that, Nick.
Yeah.
Hope that your family's doing all right and you guys are getting through it the best you can. I'm going to move into some questions and super chat stuff real quick, if that's okay. Are you done with what you need to update?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let me start with this question. Was there non-alcoholic beer in the 18th century?
Small beer is going to get there, but it's not there. I mean, non-alcoholic, I don't know. What do they really call non-alcoholic? Under 0.5%?
Yeah, I've never even looked at the stuff.
Right, exactly. Don't ask him. But yeah, like the spruce beers, the ginger beer, the small beers, they might be down as low as 0.5% to 1%, which is, almost a non-alcoholic, or at least what we would consider a non-alcoholic beer. But they didn't have methods for extracting that like we would today, where we can make a completely non-alcoholic beer. Although I'm not sure what the point is.
How were wineskins and canteens made in the wineskin canteens?
Wineskin canteens. I don't see. Well, I think
wineskins and canteens.
Wineskin and canteens, right? So a wineskin's like a thin leather bottle, and I believe that Joseph Plum Martin talks about those in one of the early parts of his book, but I don't see too many references to wineskins specifically. But canteens, yeah, you're gonna have gourd canteens. You're gonna have canteens that are made like little barrels, so with all these little staves around it. Sometimes they make sort of like a hat box canteen. I don't have any canteens. Oh,
The
yeah,
Costrals.
I do. Way over there. Costrals, leather bottles. It's like they have bringing water with you. I mean, today it's essential, right? Maybe 20 years ago we didn't think about buying water or carrying water with us, but now everybody carries water with them. They carry plastic water bottles, metal water bottles, glass water bottles. They have the same kind of issue. Hey, they're going to have leather. They're going to have wood ones. They're going to have, gourd ones. They're going to have whatever it takes. Sometimes even they'll take a glass bottle, cover it with leather. So there are a lot of different kinds of bottles for carrying water. And sometimes you're going to carry something that's got a little bit, if you don't want your water bottle to go weird on you, you put a little rum in there and that keeps it sanitary.
Okay, so into Super Chat land real quick. Tim Pearson is a new member. It's nice to have you, Tim. Thank you very much. Maxer Cool, does Townsends sell a stemware glass like the one on John's table?
We used to, but we lost that supplier that does the hand blown glass bottles or glasses, stemware like this. Today's stemware isn't that far off, so I mean it's neat to have a hand blown piece. But no, we don't currently carry them.
Yeah, it's kind of like we've talked about carrying different types of hammers, but the hardware store hammers are really close.
Yeah, they aren't that far off.
Other people have noticed that you've got a refill.
Yeah, I got a refill. What's in here now?
That one's Old Rasputin. That is a really good beer, and that is like Northern European on the line of Russia, and trying to mimic 18th century. So that's what's going on there.
Tasty.
Barkley Jenkins on Super Chat. Are you going to bring some beer on that river canoe trip? Now we are.
See, you tie a rope to the bottleneck and you let it go in the water and it'll get cool, so you pull that up and drink it later.
Yeah. Spitfire Lionheart on Super Chat. Buy yourselves a pint or two. Thank you.
Thank you.
Harshman Hills. Coin for the bartender since he decided to work. That's very kind of you.
Is that how it works?
Yeah.
You get a tip just for showing up? I mean,
I'll take it. I'll take it. Rod Poole. Would you guys be up for another collaboration with Natalie and Tara? Love the last one you guys did. I mean, they live in California.
Yeah, it's a long way. It's a long way. And I'm not going to California. Last time I was there, it was the last trip I wanted to take to California.
We love our fans in California.
But we do.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it
the
didn't
best
have.
place on earth. We love it.
It didn't have anything to do with California. It had everything to do with the traveling to
I
California on the airplane.
Yeah.
And your Uber.
So, E-Hole is on Super Chat. Always tip the bartender. Wonderful. Thank you.
Time to go. Bye, everyone.
Top Hat in Super Chat. Did colonists follow the Reinheitsgebot when making beer?
Yeah, so no.
How do you pronounce that? Did I pronounce
Well,
it?
don't ask me.
Yeah,
You did
okay.
a great job, Aaron. Ryan. Yeah, that's like the German sanitary laws for beer, and that's where hops really kind of comes in and gets introduced as a major component of beer making. It's like, well, how do we make sure this beer doesn't go bad on us? How do we kill off all these bacteria? And we'll put this bitter hops in there, and it will restrict all that bacteria growth. Now, they didn't know necessarily all the underlying science that was going on with that, but they knew what the end result was. So that's what he's referring to there. There are, I mean, just like if there are regulations on brick making, there are regulations on beer making. Let me tell you.
And beer is bread. It's just liquid.
Yeah, exactly.
People in the chat don't feel like I probably told you about the potency of Old Raspy. So they
So maybe
want
I
you to
should
be careful.
not go crazy with that
Be
one.
careful. Enzo Vinci again in the super chat. Brian is very nice and knowledgeable guy. You got that right.
Brian.
Who are they talking about?
Brian.
Brian Nagel.
Oh, Brian Nagel. Yes, I thought they said
I
Ryan.
thought you said Ryan.
That would have been funny. You got that right.
You typed that in wrong, sir.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Brian. Yes. Too true.
Kovi Shen, I think. Something for the poor abused boss. What?
Yeah,
Oh.
that's more like it.
Aaron Howitt is in here on Super Chat. The Red Stockings got locked out of the National League in 1880 for selling beer on Sundays. If that tells you anything about Cincinnatians, that tells me a lot about Cincinnatians. They like their beer. And that sounds like an all right place. Matthew H. Just ordered the double brazier. Can't wait for it to get here. So what recipe should I make on it to break it in? Ooh, thanks for all you guys do. What do you got, John?
You can do so many things with those double braziers. I mean, Michael Dragoo uses like 3 of them when he does things.
Well,
you know,
okay, it's got the surface area to do 2 things at once.
Right.
What should we do? What should they do? I'm not going to be there.
you can do almost any of our cooking episodes on that, other than the baking one. I mean, you could do the steaks in ale, or you can cook pancakes up on one side. You can use it like a grill.
I got one. How about the pork chops? Right? Because you can put pork chops right on the rack and have stuff going in the pan and then incorporate it.
Excellent
Yeah.
Go with that one.
Yeah.
Jimmy Picks, Nick's father passing poses an interesting question. Did they have wakes like we do today, or just a small ceremony at the burial site? Thank you. Condolences to Nick's family.
There are a lot of different traditions, sort of, I guess, lack of a better term, death traditions going on within the colonies. So you're going to have a more of a wake kind of situation with those places that have that Scots-Irish sort of tradition, and then it's going to be completely different. Again, if you want to get into some of those and get the quick study on those, the Albion Seed Book kind of breaks up those traditions for these different cultural groups that come into North America in that 18th century. So Virginia's going to be different than New England, and New England's different than Pennsylvania, and the Scots-Irish that come in sort of into the backcountry, they've got a completely different tradition, and the author does an excellent job of breaking those things down and seeing where those different traditions come in and how they sort of work into the North America or the America of today. So, I mean, like wedding traditions and all those things, like where did this piece of what we get as our national American tradition, where did that come from? Excellent book for that. I'm not super up on the that segment of it, so that's all the more I'll speak to it.
Okay. Folly Industries. Folly Industries in Super Chat. A smart man bribes the bartender before he needs beer.
No, let's see.
Well,
That's
Very
a lot
true.
that's a lot of money going to.
I'm just saying, this guy knows.
well, luckily,
I counted them.
Brian's not good with his math, and so what actually shows up?
Jeez.
What actually shows up is
Oh my goodness gracious. John Talley, always here for me. John Talley, coin for the bartender, also known as co-host. Ryan was missed.
co-host.
You
again
don't
with
say
that.
more? Listen, the super chat speaks. That's all I can say. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. Joy Wandry, something for Aaron?
Yes. I was waiting. When are you going to get to that one?
He's gonna start making the screen wiggle or something. Sorry, guys.
Thank you so much, Joy. David Dinelli. Did they have different recipes for homebrews as if they were on the frontier? Is there a special homestead brew? How long could they store beer without refrigeration?
Well, the whole idea of beer is that it's going to last without a lot of refrigeration. And when you're on the frontier, the problem is the materials that you have to work with. So, malting is not easy. And many of the brewers, there are special malt houses and people that just do the malting of the grains. And the malting of the grain is, so it's like, we're making beer with barley, but you don't just chuck barley into the thing and off you go with beer. You throw some yeast on it, water, boil it, whatever. No, you got to have malt, and the malting of the grains is the sprouting of them. So you take these grains and you immerse them in water for a very particular amount of time, and then there's this constant stirring and drying of the malt, and then toasting or roasting the malt. So you get a dark malt or a light malt, and then you use that to make the beer, and it has to be ground just right. So the problem with making beer per se is that you have to have this finely done malt, and then you have to have hops, which you may not have access to on the frontier, and then you have to have yeast, etc. So that's why we see recipes for spruce beer using not malt, but molasses. So our frontier beer is going to be, like the frontier of the 18th century is where the forts are. That's going to be fort beer, and fort beer is always spruce beer. So if they're making a spruce beer, which is with molasses or with, maple syrup that they can get locally. The only thing they really have to come up with is yeast. And that's not quite as hard as something like a whole bunch of malt. Do they have home recipes? Yes. And there's this wonderful little section in this 18th century, early 19th century brewing book where the author is talking about making porter, and he gives us a whole recipe. And one of the things I was thinking about early on with this episode was the idea of, we have all this craft brewing going on, and it's got all these amazing flavors. People are experimenting with all these different things, putting into their beers. And it's like, well, there's not that kind of tradition in North America in the 18th century or any place in the 18th century. Beer is beer. Sort of like when I grew up, it's like, well, there's Budweiser, that's it. We didn't have all these great, cool, strange beers showing up. Things like whatever that is. Rasputin. But was that going on in the 18th century? Did they have these flavorful, interesting, strange beers? Well, here we are. Here's a recipe for porter, and what's in porter? Malt, hops, treacle, licorice root, Acentiabina, which I don't even know what that is, 8 pounds of color. 8 pounds of color? What is that? Half an ounce of capsaicin, Spanish licorice, some Indian berry, whatever that is, Croceus, I don't know what. He's got salted tartar, he's got alum, he's got ginger, he's got slaked lime, linseed, and cinnamon in this. It's a highly complex recipe for coming up with this porter with lots of different little flavors that they're dropping in. It's missing nutmeg, probably would have put it right over the top. There are recipes for...
Always. You love nutmeg, John, and I like that about you.
Really?
It just tickles me.
I've got a nutmeg grater where I make my morning tea, and every morning I'm over there. It's like, make my tea, put my nutmeg in it.
It was a real nice donation. I saw it.
So,
you want to read it?
Do I want to read it?
That was nice to me. You want to read it?
he's over there mumbling. You want me to just keep going and you can figure out what you're going to do? Here we go. So, naval documents of the American Revolution. Why is beer going to show up with the Navy? They're taking, all these privateers are capturing ships, and what are in these ships? Linen, leather shoes, 4,000 pounds of green glass bottles, apparently empty bottles, 39 barrels and 2 tierces, which is 42-gallon barrels of strong ale. They're capturing all these vessels that are importing beer. And here's a journal from a sloop. It's at Quebec in 1775. On Monday, they received 2 barrels of beer. On Wednesday, they received a hogshead of beer. On Thursday, they received another barrel of beer. Saturday, a whole hogshead of beer. On Sunday, 2 hogsheads of beer. They're getting beer constantly. They're import, and all these guys, this is a sloop, so there's only 60, 80 guys on board, but that's a lot of beer. So they're getting a continuous supply of barrels of beer from on shore. Love that little piece.
Okay, hold on. Frank Bronzo. Is this a first time to 1,000 likes during a live stream?
First time to 1,000
I
likes?
think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll drink to that.
Yeah.
Cheers, John.
Well, hey. And is this probably our highest, most people in live stream?
I think we broke the record during the video while it was playing.
Incredible.
We keep breaking it.
Thank you guys so much.
Everyone who's showing up these live streams. We have a lot of fun in live streams. They mean a lot about, how we continue to do videos and what they're about. It's like part of the community that influences what we do and how we do it.
All right, let me get some super chat stuff real quick, and then I want to get into some of the chat questions.
Okay.
Richard H. Marr. Hey, John, I love your videos. Could you please say hello to Julia, whose purpose in life is to savor the flavors and aromas of the 18th century?
Hello, Julia. I am so glad that you savor and enjoy those 18th century flavors. They are a lot of fun.
Rob Pools in Super Chat. Tip for the underappreciated guy that has to wedge between the time vortex
Ouch.
to help him make all of this happen.
And it's painful.
Yeah. I have a speech prepared.
Do you think me? Autumn Falls 89. Are you able to ship outside of the USA yet?
Yes, they have been shipping items outside of the USA, and I think it's working. I'm not sure if we've heard from anybody who's received anything, but we've shoved them out the door, and we did our best. Sometimes it's like one of those setting the box in the ocean, and you hope it...
Like a message in a bottle.
Yeah, it's like, let's hope it gets there.
Aaron Howitt, did you pick a name for the boar yet?
No, we haven't, but we talked about it, and I love Francis Bacon. That was a good one. Hamlet, that was one. I don't know some of the other ones, but yeah.
Francis Bacon cracks me up. Mike Cruck in Super Chat for Aaron through the time vortex.
Yeah. I have so many people I want to thank.
Guys, listen. I'm the one giving you booze, okay? Let's just remember that. Okay.
Somebody said they needed to bribe me so I don't turn the stream off. That is true.
How about root beer? Do they have root beer?
Root beer is typically what shows up when we talk.
Sarsaparilla.
Yeah, we talk about that. Now that I had a... No, that's a different one. I had some sarsaparilla in a bag over here. They don't call it root beer, but some of the ginger beers have those extra things in them. And, what we call root beer kind of shows up really in the 19th century, but its roots are back here with ginger beer and with spruce beer and the extra things that they add in them. And they do start out as very much a medicinal thing. Just like Coca-Cola and Dr. Pepper are, medicinal, right? They were working on this medicinal idea.
They make me feel good. Dr. Pepper makes me feel wonderful.
I'm glad.
Okay.
It's a tonic. Just like, what is it? I'll think of it later. You keep going.
Okay, so apparently one of those boxes placed in the ocean and nudged along made it.
Hey!
Yes, I received my mug in Ireland today.
Excellent.
It took only 2 weeks.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Is it true that beer making was one of... Oh, wait, I've already read that one. Sorry. I thought I deleted it. How did taverns store and serve drinks like wine, ale, and beer? Is it just in huge barrel or cask?
Yeah, so, some of these books talk about the specific idea of when to bottle it off. So there are definite, like, like these ships, they're receiving their beer in giant barrels, and it may have been pretty fresh, right? It's like, well, it wasn't made that long ago, or it's still kind of sizzling away. We're going to give it to them in its barrel. But then a lot of these different recipes talk about exactly when to bottle it. And there's even technological issues with bottling beers in the 18th century. We ran into that with our experimenting with ceramic bottles and putting beer in them, and they're pressurized. You put a little, you like prime the bottle, and put a little bit of sugar in there, and it sets off the fermentation again to create carbonation and pressurizing the bottle. And if the bottle isn't perfectly sealed, inside all the beer just comes right through the walls of the bottle, and it's amazing stuff. But yes, they were in different qualities. Boy, if I have that one reading, I don't think I have it. I don't think I printed that one out. There's a great book that was a New Jersey farmer's sort of journal of the time period, and he talks about giving directions. I think it's the governor of New Jersey, and he's giving directions about it's like, oh yeah, I want my beer done this way, and after a year then I'm going to take it and I'm going to bottle it for even longer aging in the bottle. So they're doing a lot of different things. A lot of that stuff is glass bottles, just like that one sloop. They captured sloop. It had 4,000 pounds of glass bottles to be filled with, you guessed it, your brandy, your wines, and your beers.
What were the uses of stale bread in the 18th century?
You're using stale bread if it's like most households, right? We just eat it right up. It's all gone. If it does get a chance to go stale, which isn't very often, you're using it in all kinds of recipes. It kind of as a filler. There's a lot of breadcrumbs being used as a thickening agent, and we talked about that. What was that cheese soup episode? Did that have breadcrumbs in it?
Yeah, the Cheshire cheese soup.
And of course, if you ever have extra, you can always do something like a bread pudding or a white pot. Same thing. Excellent.
Well, a lot of
Excellent
recipes call for toasted bread.
Yeah.
And if you toast stale bread, it's not so stale anymore.
That's right. You bring it right back to life.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even know it was stale.
Right. This one might be difficult. I don't know if any of us can answer it, but I thought I'd at least mention it. Who is your favorite person from history? Ryan, John, and Aaron. Or from the 18th century, rather.
From the 18th century. Yeah, I don't look at people so much as, the overall thing. And, people are people. It doesn't matter. You pick your person, and they're not all good, right? So, it's like, oh, this guy's my hero. And then somebody says, oh, he did X, Y, Z. And
that's
you go,
difficult.
Okay. So I look at, what they've given us in our society and some ideas like that. But I know that people in history are not perfect. So I don't know. I'm not sure who I would look to. I think Benjamin Franklin's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah. It's hard. When you're reading it, yeah. I'll read something about somebody and they'll be my favorite for a while.
Yeah.
And then but John Adams is somebody that I continually come back to as at least consistent.
Yeah.
Maybe it seems like everybody else, you think you understand who they are, their character, and then they do something wild, and you're like, what the heck happened? But he seems to be very consistent.
People are complex.
Yes, they are. Got something, Aaron?
More just like taking the awesome things from people in history, the great things, and keeping those and holding on to them, all the great ideas, and there's people,
right?
And they had some really good ideas.
So this is in Super Chat. Did they cook with marijuana in the 18th century, asking for a friend?
As far as like that,
they cook with it?
As far as I know, no. The closest thing that just pops into my head is using great quantities of stinging nettles or something like that. But I don't know about number one. I don't know.
It's always disappointing for people to find out that they didn't write about marijuana in the 18th century. There's just not a whole lot there.
Yeah.
Tim, I don't know what your last name is, but I really appreciate you sending a donation.
Thank you.
Love your channel. You guys do a great job. I'm always learning something. Was beer more popular than wine?
Again, that's a cultural thing, and it depends on the socioeconomic level that we're talking about in a person, and that would be a study to kind of come up with the idea of, okay, so are we importing? Okay, this is even tricky. If it's like, where would I go to figure that out? Would I go and say, how much is being imported? Well, but we're probably brewing more beer than we're making wine. So we already have like 50% of the beer is imported, 50% is produced. So I don't know how I would find that out.
Well, it's still, I mean, geographically now, I mean, take the USA and you say, what's the most popular protein?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, overall there probably is one, but in each geographical area, it's going to vary.
Yeah.
So, KD in Super Chat. This is thanks for introducing me to the delicious recipe of old-style fried chicken.
That fried chicken episode that fried chicken recipe is really good.
I didn't try it.
You never have tried it?
No. I need to make it. I've never tried it.
We need to have that in a live stream.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be cool. JM Kupia? I'm not sure. But thank you so much for your donation. I'm sorry I'm not great with names and pronunciations. And then we've got one more super chat in here. That is from Roswalitka 90 Zawa. Hello. Woo. Did people drink vodka on the frontier? Greetings from Poland.
Not vodka, but our equivalent, which is corn whiskey. Yeah. Very much so, and like Matthew Patton's diary, all the time he's getting rum. So sort of, rum's being made down in the West Indies, and that is a major liquor that's being imported, and people are using that medicinally and entertainmentally. I don't know, but and then even whiskey, which is sort of like, okay, what are we gonna do with our excess corn that we can't transport? And then things like apple brandy, but that's as close as what we've got.
I don't think we've ever had this question. Are you ready?
Whoa.
Tyler Todd in Super Chat. Off topic, but what was baby food like in the 1700s?
It's a good thing we haven't had that question before because...
well, what's baby food now? It's mushed up vegetables.
Oh, I wish I had the little baby bottle.
Yeah, that is cool.
So what they're being fed baby-wise is pap. So it's like a panada of the time period, which is a thin gruel, and sometimes like bread, like you use your leftover bread and you cook it up in water till you make this just like I don't know why anybody would eat it, but that's what they ate, and they would mix that up, warm it up a little bit, and they'd have these little pap boats, which were a little bowl with a little V front to it, and they'd fill that up and chuck it in their little mouth and tip it up and off you go. So that's the main sort of thing that they talk about feeding children. There is a shift from like breastfeeding and wet nurses versus women really taking control of their children, especially in England in the time period for higher fashion. The idea of child rearing definitely takes a big turn in the 18th century and changes by the time you get to the 19th century. And the idea of feeding them and how that's done is definitely another one of those things where it's like, oh, that's somebody else's job too. No, that's my job as a mother to take care of those things.
John.
Yes.
It's time to say farewell.
Whoa! Man, that was quick.
It was.
It was
we did an extra half hour.
Extra long live stream and it's done already. Amazing.
Oh, wait, I got to throw this in. This is good.
Okay.
Did they have circular sawmills in the 1700s?
No, everything that was happening, either they had pit saws, which, two guys on a big long saw, and they were, one was on top and the other was on the bottom. They were sawing the logs one board at a time, or they would have a sash mill, which had like 4 or 6 blades in a frame, and that frame would be working up and down by water power, and the log would be shoved through that and sawn into planks.
That one's crazy.
Yeah, that would be cool. That's what's happening. Buzz saws and those round-bladed saws. That's a 19th century thing, and even the science behind getting a big saw blade like that to spin up to speed and not do crazy weird things, a science in and of itself.
Tim sent in a super chat without a question. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone. Patreon people. What?
I just got another one. Dark Owl sends in the super chat. Were there any particular brews or mixed drinks men and women would ingest to woo a potential lover? Well, I don't know about that.
There's a big... Yeah, that's probably a special book that I don't have. When I find it, I'll print it for you. Anyway, thank you so much. Again, thank you, Patreon folks, and Super Chat, and members here on YouTube. You guys help make it happen, and especially, all you folks that come into the live stream. This is special and a strange, different mixture. It's not a YouTube video. It's not something else. It's a live stream, and I don't know how to explain it any other way. It's always a lot of fun and kind of, relaxing in some ways. So thank you so much for all you do and all your comments, all your great support. Yes, Ryan.
I have another one. Let me proofread this one first. Jeez. No, I'm joking. Pavel Brodsky, I think. What about bottles?
Yeah.
There would have been a great variety of them. It was probably much more expensive and really varied. They are collectibles today.
Yeah, so we used to carry bottles. There's an onion bottle up there. You got mallet bottles back there?
Yeah, I've got a little flask too.
Yeah, ceramic bottles, glass bottles. They came in all, a lot of, I don't know. The bottle style kind of settles down. But yeah, bottles, wonderful topic. And just the idea of making them. Can you imagine hand making all those bottles in the 18th century? 4,000 pounds of bottles just in one little ship. Amazing. Again, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a tremendous weekend. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.